Well, welcome to Buzz with Us. I'm here with Evan Underbrink, who has a poem to share.
This is my apology. Some of these in here are good. Most of those on whom I've imposed them agree. I have left the bad ones in because this is a book about a life. I share it with those who let me impose, like you. You see. This book is a room in the basement of a church where a friar has set his wood to whittle. Here there be splinters, chips, knots, tears, the scent of stale beer, and once in a wild wood, wild page, wild day, a glimpse, if in sketch, of God. So this is the first poem that starts my book there, which I'm more than delighted to be chatting about with you and with my friend Brian here. So,
Well, I love that beginning. I love that beginning, and I love this book called Milford. Tell us why Milford, and what is this about? What is this all about?
so not to belabor a point here, but most of us have gone through perhaps one of the most defining tragedies of our existence, which is a pandemic. And a variety of people have dealt with that in different ways. And one way that I dealt with it was living in Milford, Ohio, which is this marvelous little section of the world that is very familiar to some, in a kind of spiritual retreat for a year at the Jesuit Spiritual Center at Milford. And during that time, being previously a published poet, I took the opportunity to write a book that was a reflection on how we spend time in solitude, how we spend time together in in meaningful reflection on ourselves. And so this book that was written was every poem in it was written on Milford campus in this region with this theory of place as a very important theme.
Mhm.
So what you pick up is a year of a life that connects to the sense of wild time spent in seclusion or isolation or social distancing, whatever term you want to place it, but then in the desire of connection back from that. As we're recording this, I want to dive into another poem here, if that's all right. I feel
Yeah.
like my words describing the book are much lesser to actually reading some of the things. It is autumn, and the snow is just beginning to suggest itself around us. And here's another poem I don't think we've shared before, called Two. Um, and obviously you have connections there, but so to see the snow as a millioned diamond thing, made more rare, not less, that it stays only for its own brilliance, denying coveting grasps its beauty, giving humble hands only humble water, to feel with silken sheets the deathbeds of each worm whose life we gave to account for beauty's charge, to dream, and with a dream to know the import of your own worst shadow, yet know still to still the soul by claiming what was left in restless, graved memory, to be such as one any such ones would speak of such a one, yet know that you are you, is to be the majesty of self, and in a royal self to rule the inner place greater than the world. So I shared that one particularly because to answer the question, why did I write this book? That's sort of it, is this sort of reflection on self in solitude and also in place. So there are photos of the region. There's a marvelous couple things there. So yeah,
Love it.
thank you for thank you for just letting me share some of this this beauty here that I think at least I've made a first cutting towards in this book.
Absolutely. Just before you left town, you had a little reading on the campus of Milford at the Spiritual Center, and I thought you very wisely, before you read anything, we shared a little food, a little conversation. Then you led us on a short walk of the campus and to places where you wrote, or significant places, or there were significant places in my life. I spent a lot of time on that campus myself, and it was very interesting, like this little pilgrimage of sorts, and we all felt this, like, it was pretty obvious to look at the group and kind of go, oh, all the tension of our lives, whatever we brought with us, was just draining, and as we found this, like, oh, here is this place, and this is the place from which you wrote. And tell us something of that. Like, what happened for you in that year? Because you've done a lot of things with your life, but what, and are doing more wonderful things with your life.
Yeah, this is not the first book. If you read this and enjoy this, I invite you into the journey of writing. Working on my second one right now, in fact. But I think we have something wrong in how we treat books. They're, they become vessels for our experience, but they rarely, at their best, do they become experience itself. And that's what I tried to do with this book. Is I don't want you to read this on a Sunday unconnectedly. I don't want you to just put it on your bookshelf. I want you to walk around where you are. And better yet, I want you to visit Milford and think, this has a sense of place. There is something to this right here, a moment in time that sort of matters. And in our current, well, not to say in our current culture, and that's sort of a cliche in a certain way, but it's well, let me share another poem here.
Yeah.
How about that'll be an easier way. In the book, it's departures, and this really encapsulates this idea of leaving space and then making the left space matter, which is, I think, what we all experience. Well, the poem, Departures. I leave behind myself, wholly, yet in the moments that become only dates, in the places I have been. I am not sad, not often, but so intensely when I see myself go. The new thing, me, unstable, fixed in full quivering potential, like always before. I learned to love the ink, while fresh and so easy to smudge. Then it dries and I must adore the next splotch. Well, that's a poem there, and that's a poem, and that really, that speaks to it. Is that we hopefully you are with me on this, experiencing a certain transience in time. And to write something on the page and to read something is hopefully a moment that connects you to me, to a place, to a time. And that's enormously rare, I'm finding. Um, you can read Dostoevsky, you can read Dickens, and these are timeless tales, and yet they're not called Milford. You
Right.
know what I mean? The closest we get is Walden.
Mhm.
And this book was very specifically written as a sort of time capsule to bring you into a phenomenological space. Um, Hopefully it works well. Hopefully you've had a little taste of what I'm doing with it. So yes. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you've certainly fallen in love with ink over the years, yeah, and you've allowed it to become a major next step from this year in Milford. Yeah, I mean you have the luxury of uh, time and wilderness of sorts. Last year, working as a youth retreat minister, essentially.
Yeah, and you asked that previously. Sorry, I didn't answer that. I'm
That's okay.
so caught up in sort of the delight. I hope you feel it as well. The second you pick up this book, you just find yourself in a new world, and that's the love of it. No, so a brief biography there is probably warranted. We should have started with that, I suppose. My name is Evan Underbrink. I have a master's degree in theological studies from Duke University. I'm currently working on my second master's in theology at Boston College. I have worked before as a high school theology teacher, at Milford, as a youth pastor at the Jesuit Center at Milford, and I've also worked as a pub crawl guide for ghost tour themed, pub crawls in Austin, Texas. So it's been a wild and varied life, and but spoken with this desire uh, for God, for some transcendent connection to meaning. And, I've met enough people to know that that's not a universal quality, the desire towards some deeper connection. But I also know the sort of people who might be listening to this um, generally tend to have some interest in poetry, and I think we scratched the itch here. You so
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. So that's more or less me. I'm living in Boston right now. I've lived in 14 different states and Moscow, Russia, for what it's worth. Looking ahead, maybe towards Germany, towards Poland. Life is interesting. We'll see where I end up next. But it seems to me something that I'm moving towards is making more or less a series of books that are dedicated to place.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you felt this, but uh, places have become consumeristic. I mean, look out your window and look at your average, and maybe this is pithy, but your average construction design of a building, of a strip mall, of a McDonald's, they're bricks. They have no character. They're designed buildings to put a label, a logo on, which speaks to the fact that place has lost significance. And this book and what I see myself trying to do um, is re-inaugurate space as
Mhm.
being vital. Space, words, place, life. Um, yeah. So, can I share one more poem? Is that all
Yeah,
right? Sorry
yeah,
to
great
sorry.
way to, yeah.
I just want to share these poems so that you'll read them and you'll hear them in my voice because it's been said before. I started, maybe I should say that. I started my poetic journey in dive bars in Spokane, Washington, as a slam poet, and so the spoken word is sort of was my bedrock, And then, I was introduced to T.S. Eliot and Shakespeare and the rest. And so reading them matters, I suppose. Here's one that I rather like because it's mythic, and I love bringing back myths. A flower fairy and a scarecrow who cried. Sing us into stars. Place your two-lipped hand upon my straw chest. Kiss my burlap skin. We shall laughing watch the maypole girls tell their gay May stories of bright pinpricks of light upon the sky. Let us be eternal in tales richer, other than truth. My blossom bride, I, your field guard groom. Father cowslip we to wed, mice to attend the bed. We shall know little pixies into your petal womb. We grow old, my weather-wilt rose, I, crow-pecked crone. The maypole lies, we worse than dead or forgotten, never tailed. Come, we will find him, poet drowsing upon our wine-strong stars. Whisper our love, sweet mortal, there once was. Of course, you can tell the sort of cyclical nature of that poem. I hope so. I don't know how much of this is just apparent to people, to be honest with you. And maybe that's my difficulty is of course the title is the poem itself, a flower fairy and a scarecrow who cried. That's the inauguration of the poetic, and then the poem begins really at the end. And I love playing with that. I love playing with time because when you're in a place like Milford, time moves differently. Maybe that's what being on retreat is, and maybe that is perhaps what most of us experienced during the pandemic, was a time where time moved differently. So, yeah.
And, I think any collection of poetry held in one's hands, like printed poetry, it's easy to kind of like, oh, I'll just flip through, I'll finish that. But it's almost also impossible, right? It's like this, you read a poem and it's like flashes of areas of your life get drawn into this person's experience with words, right? And sound. And then all of a sudden you read it again and it's like, oh, wait a minute. And then you read it again. Oh, wait a minute. So there is a poem invites this sense of lexio almost immediately, right? That's drawing us in and then eventually distilling us to, oh, life, or whatever big word, makes sense, God, universe, whatever, but and there a place where we can kind of sit. And like you said, it can happen anywhere, right? And this book happened for you in Milford, but it can happen anywhere.
Well, that's sort of, I'm glad you've said that because it's fine to note, and I will, that the space on the page says something itself. You really need to feel that page in front of you. And you may have seen examples of this, but I think of jazz, and I think of how important the word not said is. And I've just been thinking about, as you read this book, please do read this book, notice where I is left at the end of a line. And that's very intentional. I do it over and over again in this book. I just rereading through the manuscript, because really the position of the self before an endless white space of page of possibility. There's an emotion there that is so very important in the book, in my own personal life, in my own personal poetic journey, and hopefully for you. But you mentioned moments, so they did not see their own beauty is a lovely little piece here. Short, but because I wanted to leave space for the page, as you've said here, to hold it in your hands, to see the white space of the page. They did not see their own beauty. In the men gather, Waffle House at 8 a.m. Rain. The women move to make hot eggs on a cold plate. Morning, Carlos. Morning, Dave. In the shades of gray, the sky unfolds in birdsong petals. A church bell finds the day begun. Isn't that nice? Isn't that just like a lovely little, like any person who hears that knows what that's talking about. And it's fun to see it on a page, I suppose, is the long story of that. So that's this book. It's a book of a life. Little vignettes that are connected to the place of Milford, but extend themselves into wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope it becomes a kind of retreat for you. That's its desire. That's its design, is to invite you into a space that is beyond just words on a page or you sitting wherever you are, that matters.
Definitely. Well, I can't wait to see this one on the page. Soon to be going to press. We just need a few more good friends to step up and pre-order so we can send it off to press, and they can do that at vitalitybuzz.org. And this will be the first of many books for you, friend, as you continue to fall in love with the ink on the page and the way that the ink shows up for you on the page, no matter which river you're sitting next to, right?
Well, let us be very clear here, is that Vitality Press Buzz is absolutely essential to this sort of book. This defines place, and you creating and you hopefully purchasing this book, supporting this endeavor, creates culture, creates space, creates time, creates beauty. And you do more than just buying a book by buying this. You make space for the divine, and I think that matters. Maybe that's too high concept. I don't know, but hopefully, can I leave you on one more poem?
Please.
I feel like I stuffed them in here, but because I honor your time and I want you to have this beauty. Just buy the book so that you have all of this. I've said like
That's right. That's right.
150, and each of them are worth your time. But this one is good. This one you should read to your children before you go to bed. It's called Night Song, and I read this first on the first book reading that we did together, and I think I end every one of the poetry reading is this book on this one. So, Night Song. When you repose, compose yourself in love. Pray in harmonies with the angels about you, some unseen. Make melodious your life, no, merely attune to the song of love you already are. And should you awake shivering in the discord of time too narrow, too loud. Listen to the heart-beaten rhythm of being, and being in itself very good. Make nocturnes with the maker, chorus with creator. Remind your mind of itself. A duet divine. Sometimes use lyrics. This is just a lovely book, you know, Brian.
It is.
I really hope y'all enjoy this, because I don't know. There's just pleasure and beauty and joy in this. You know what I mean?
There sure is. And I'm very grateful for this conversation. Grateful that you're sharing these poems with the world, both here and in the book. And to more, friend.
Yes, absolutely. And as I've said, I've shared 6 poems in this short introduction. There is 100 of these, and each of them are a little seed that I'm happy to see grow. So
Thank you so much, Evan.
of course, we'll talk later. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.